Hi, this is Kevin Frank. Today is May 4th, and we are here once again with MSU State Climatologist Dr. Jeff Andresen to discuss current weather conditions and the upcoming forecast. So, Jeff, thank you for joining us.
Well, thanks, Kevin, and we'll try and we'll try and come up with some better news weather-wise here than we dealt with quite a few conditions here. Let me see if I can bring up my. Do you have my screen yet?
Yep, looks good, Jeff.
All right. Well, I think our forecast theme, I've sort of summarized it here on the lead slide. There's two images. One is of the jet stream conditions here as of Friday morning this week. And then the second on the right is a forecast of mean temperatures relative to normal or departures from normal. And what you can see on the left-hand side is a big upper air troughing feature. We talk a lot about these things, but they're just so important in our day-to-day weather patterns. But with these troughs, we tend to have colder than normal air to surface temperatures and vice versa when we're under a ridge, like out over the western US. But again, the overwhelming message here in our guidance is for this troughing feature. Once again, it's stronger than what the models had suggested earlier, and it probably will persist longer than what the model guidance also suggested earlier. And the result of this all, again, is inevitably is cooler than normal weather. And so we're looking at probably an extended period, at least a week, maybe a couple weeks through the middle of, I would say at least the middle of the month here, of cool, and we'll call it unsettled weather as well, because with these features here, these cut off from the circulation generally, there's a lot of cold air aloft, it's unstable, we get a lot of clouds, some showery type precip, not usually really light, but just a consistent, cool, cloudy, windy type of weather event, and that's definitely where we're headed. Looking though at the last week, lots of range of conditions from much cooler than normal to much above normal. Here we saw that we got into the warm sector of a system here over this past weekend with some really warm temps, but it didn't make it as it has before. It didn't make it through the whole state. So what we have for our mean temperature departures for the previous week is cooler than normal conditions across the far north, a degree or two below, ranging to a degree or two above normal, especially as we get down towards the southwestern lower. So again, Michigan's sort of on that dividing line between the cooler, the normal to our north and east, and the warmer than normal to our west. The bigger story for many, though, once again, looking at precipitation the past week, some heavy precipitation up, especially in the northern lower. More than 2 inches fell there in a couple of different events. We also had some significant precipitation, again, more than half an inch along the southern border, but look here in between, across large portions of central and southern lower Michigan, we got in some cases, less than 1/10 of an inch. And there were I think the frustrating thing about that is that there were many events that came, but they just had very, very light precipitation or limited precipitation with them. That's certainly been the case here locally in the East Lansing area. But it is the issue with dryness is becoming more and more of a long-term concern, and I'll get to that in here in just a second. We did have another freeze event here overnight last Friday into Saturday morning. These are temperatures as of Saturday morning, and the ones in the blue here are all sub-freezing, but it wasn't nearly as severe as what we saw earlier. Most areas in the 28 to 32 degree range. So again, a marginal freeze. It was not a hard freeze, but it did cover large areas of the state. And you can see the impact or influence of the lakes here where temperatures generally remained above freezing along the lake shore. In terms of degree day units, where are we at? This is the March 1st running total base 50. We're still ahead of normal, but less so than we were earlier. We did pick up some significant heat accumulation over the weekend with that warm air, and that primarily across southern half of the state, but generally 3 to 10 calendar days ahead of normal. So still ahead, or still advanced, but not as much as where we were 2 or 3 weeks ago. Moving to precipitation, these are rankings of April precipitation across the Midwest and including Michigan. And the number you see here, basically it's from 1 to 129. That's how many years are included in this data set here running. And so 1 is the wettest April on record, and 129 is the driest, if you're wondering. And what you can see again is a tale of two cities here. Northern Michigan was wetter than normal in April. Much of the lower peninsula, especially the central and southern lower peninsula, much drier than normal. And with these rankings here, as you can see across the southern part of the lower peninsula, generally up in the driest 20th percentile, the driest 1/5 of all Aprils here in the most recent years. So, and of course that comes on the heels of drier than normal weather during March and certainly portions of February, and in some cases even further back than that. And so if we look at soil moisture, where are we at right now? And we typically don't look at this time of the year because Michigan, most years, much more often than not, has ample moisture in the soil accumulated over the winter and the off season. But this year has been different because of the lack of precip. On the top here, this is the percent of plant available moisture in the top meter. So just a little less than 3 feet of the soil profile, what's there. And typically, again, we would see numbers way up 80, 90 percentile at this time of the year, but not this year, at least not in the much of the lower peninsula and the central and southern lower. You can see 50%, 40%. What does that translate to? Well, for a medium textured soil, for that, again, that top layer, we might see maybe 5 inches of plant available water in that. Well, it suggests that right now we've only got maybe 2 or 2.5. And we're down, that means we're down relative to normal, about maybe 3 inches. That's a whole month of precip on average. So we're going to have to see to keep up with demand, so especially as we move into the warmer time here in the growing season. We're going to have at least normal precipitation to keep up with demand. And it's good. It's a situation we just typically don't see here that often in Michigan. How unusual is it? On the lower right-hand side here, these are percentiles in terms of where that moisture is relative, again, top meter, where is it relative to the historical normals? And you can see, unfortunately, it's up in the top 10 driest, right? 10% of the driest. So it's pretty dry. Again, especially across central and southern lower Michigan relative to normal. The drought monitor last week reflecting this really ramped up our drought indices in Michigan. You can see almost all now of the lower peninsula has been bumped up into the D1 or moderate drought category. It has been a while since we've seen that. The week before, just to give you some idea, this week we are 57% of the statewide area in D1. Last week we were only 17%, so it's a big move forward. I would also say that given the precipitation that fell, some cases more than 2 inches across northern sections of lower Michigan, there probably will be some help there. But for the southern parts of the state, it's this is not going to go away anytime soon. And the only part of the state at this point in time really not influenced is the far north. So something to definitely keep an eye on here as time goes on. On our weather map this morning, we've got a center of low pressure over Saginaw, and it's on its way east and north. This is the system that brought the precip overnight, mostly light precipitation once again, but it's going to be moving out of the state and take the threat of rainfall, most of the threat of rainfall with it. We will see noticeably cooler and a little bit less humid air filter in behind it. It's going to be a cool, windy day, and that's going to be the case for the next couple. By tonight, it moves into, as you can see, into Ontario. There will be a chance for some isolated showers this afternoon, but this would be definitely an exception rather than the rule. Most areas will remain dry, but it will be in generally a cool, windy, unsettled day with significantly cooler temperatures, especially for across the southern part of the state. Highs only in the 40s and the 50s. That's where we're going to be for the next several days. Daytime temps below normal, 40s north, 50s south, and then low temperatures generally in the 30s. Now, as you can see behind this, we've got high pressure moving into the state for tomorrow. That should lead to, well, actually a fairly nice day with some clearing skies, but it's still going to be cool, only in, again, 40s to 50s, with wind during the afternoon hours. But we should see some sun tomorrow over most of the state before the next weather system, which you can see out here over the northern plains, approaches on Thursday morning. That's the next chance for precip. But with this, it's a northern branch jet stream system. It will be very limited. Those areas that do see precip, probably less than 1/10 of an inch again. And just because we've got a lot of cold air aloft with this air mass in northern parts of the state, there could be a mix, or it could even be changed over temporarily to some snowfall. So that's sort of where we are, more late winter than the springtime conditions here. But it will be very limited, and totals with this will be less than a tenth of an inch. So we're not talking about much, if anything at all. The threat of precipitation with this will be over overnight by early Friday morning, and actually set the stage for a fairly nice day on Friday. Now, after Thursday, next chance for precip comes in a southern jet stream branch system this weekend. Right now, it looks like it'll be overnight Saturday into Sunday, and then so the threat of rainfall Sunday and into Monday, maybe even a little bit beyond that. But just like so many systems we've seen recently, the one here earlier in the week, the one last week, that come out of the southern branch. There's all sorts of weather activity down across the middle Mississippi Valley and the Ohio Valley. It makes it up to Michigan, and Michigan only barely gets the northern periphery. That's what we're sort of seeing hints of here for this next weather system this weekend. So I'm not holding out a lot of hope. It could change. There's going to be a lot of water available with that system, but it probably just doesn't make it quite far enough north. And so a lot of Michigan, the southern half of it, has been left in between two storm tracks, literally. And that's been part of the problem with the dry trend. And it looks like that may continue here, but something to keep an eye on. The total precipitation forecast here through next Tuesday morning, again, like I just said, most of it is to our south. And so it's another drier than normal week for a lot of the state, generally less than a quarter of an inch. So not a whole lot in the rain gauge here. Countering that, though, especially for areas that have dried off, it's going to be cool. Our potential evapotranspiration rates are also going to be much lower than normal. So the atmospheric demand keeps things in check. We're not looking for any days like what we saw on Saturday or Sunday with the really hot or warm, dry conditions and strong winds. Nothing like that. It'll be really the opposite of that. I also, given the cold air mass coming in, there will be a continuing threat overnight of scattered frost, maybe some freezing temperatures, especially across northern interior parts of the state here, beginning overnight tomorrow night and then continuing into Saturday. But there's enough wind and enough clouds with this to keep the temperature up a few degrees. It's not expected to be anything widespread or serious like what we saw a week or two ago with hard freezes. These are, I think right now it looks as though Saturday, overnight Friday, Saturday will be the coldest evening that we're looking at. At least that's what it's suggesting. And these are forecast low temperatures here for Saturday morning. Once again, you can see a few upper 20s, but mostly low 30s. And there's also some benefit from being near the lakes with the temperatures a little bit warmer than that. So just something to keep in the back of your mind. The threat is there. If we do go clear and calm, we could get a couple degrees colder than what you see here. So again, it looks like Saturday morning would maybe be the coldest of the next several mornings. In the medium range forecast guidance, there's more of the same, but the forecast models have been suckering the meteorologists in here together to believe that ultimately we'll see some moderation. And what we have not seen, we just have not seen much moderation. We've seen a continued amplified pattern. It does call for cooler than normal mean temperatures and above normal precipitation totals, which is what we saw last week and even the week before that. But I think that there's a reason for it, and something we don't talk about very often. And I apologize for the acronyms here, but JMO stands for Julian-Madden Oscillation. This is something we don't hear about very often, but the Julian-Madden Oscillation is an atmospheric teleconnection pattern or upper air pattern in the tropics. And typically it's something that's found across the Indian and Pacific Oceans and tropical areas. Of course, you say, well, what does that got to do with us? Well, the answer is it's a little bit like the El Nino, La Nina, the ENSO phenomenon. It impacts the flow of the jet stream in the mid latitudes in both sides, both in the northern and the southern hemisphere. And there are predictable patterns depending on the phase of this JMO or Julian-Madden oscillation. There are 8 stages that have been identified. And currently, if we look at where we are right now, we are in stage 1 of this index, which indicates that right now the center of this circulation in the tropics is over Africa and the far western Indian Ocean. Well, during the next couple of weeks, it's forecast, the green line here, it's forecast to move into phase 2 and possibly phase 3. Again, what does this matter? Well, if you look on the right-hand side here, there's definitely some correlation with jet stream patterns in the mid-latitudes, because in phases 1, 2, and 3 of the Julian-Madden oscillation, more often than not, we tend to see troughing, upper air troughing, like the first slide that I showed you, exactly the same pattern. And as a result of that, we get cooler than normal mean temperatures. Not much direction on precip at this time of the year, but for this time, but for spring, here in the month of May, we tend to go colder than normal. So the bottom line is here, I think that this pattern that we're in with cooler than normal temperatures, it may be around a little bit longer than what the medium range forecast is suggesting, at least through the middle of the month, and maybe even longer than that. And so precip, it's again, it's a little bit difficult, but I don't know that I believe the above normal totals. The models have been teasing us for a few weeks and just haven't, they've been too aggressive with the precip total amounts. So we'll see. There was a revised May outlook. If you remember, well, the week before, we looked at the May outlook and it called for normal to above normal mean temperatures and above normal precipitation totals. And that was the forecast for much of the first half of the summer as well. But now there's a revision made on the last day of the month. It just came out again late last week. And look what they've done. This reflects the most recent medium range and also the JMO, the Julian-Madden oscillation data that I just showed you. And now they've changed it. This is something you don't see that often from the Climate Prediction Center at NOAA. But now we've reversed our temperature normal to below normal mean temperatures expected for the month of May. And a lot of that, of course, is going to be because we're going to be cooler than normal for a lot of, at least the first half of the month, and probably longer than that. It still does call, though, for above normal precipitation totals. We'll see. It has been wetter than normal in the northern part of the state, but definitely not in the south. So wrapping up here, again, cool and unsettled for the next several days with not much of a change. And while it will be drier than normal, it's also, there's going to be less PET than normal, but the days are going to be sort of windy. A couple maybe nicer days in there. Tomorrow won't be too bad. It'll be windy, and Friday shouldn't be too bad either. But other than that, we will be looking at the sort of clouds and at least the threat of maybe a little bit of precip. So more of the same. And as you saw, the medium range forecast guidance is pointing in that JMO is also pointing us in the same direction. So I'll stop there and see if there are any questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Jeff. Just kind of reminds me I often hear this, especially from our professional turf managers in the field, that it feels like in Michigan we go from cold spring to hot summer in a snap of a finger. And kind of with your May forecast being colder than normal, that makes me kind of think the same thing might happen again this year.
Yes, and it's back to what we saw about the precip and the soil moisture. That's again, it's something that sort of creeps up over time, but it takes a while to build those deficits and surpluses too, but certainly the deficits, and we just don't see that often. But unquestionably, it makes us more vulnerable. The risk of running out of water later on as it gets warm in July and August is much higher than it would be typically in Michigan. And we have problems with too much atmospheric demand, even in a good year where we have lots of soil moisture. So this is the situation, if you look at it climatologically, where we come into the year without that full profile of soil moisture, which we can rely on. It's just like extra money in reserve in the bank for us that we can use. We just don't have it. This is a situation you would find if you lived out in the Great Plains or out farther west, where many years we don't see recharge of the soil moisture, and you come in with less. It just means that the odds of running out are higher than they would be otherwise. And unfortunately, I think for a lot of the state, that's sort of where we are in Michigan this year.
Well, Jeff, I appreciate you doing it this week. So thank you, and we'll hang on and keep our sweatshirts and jeans handy until it warms up.
Good idea.
Sometime later this spring.
We'll see you next week.
Thank you, Jeff.